Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second day. Sounds like the microphone is a little bit. Can we? Hello. Microphone's got a little bit of a hiss to it. I think they're working on it there in the back. All right, let's try this again. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second day of this important gathering. I hope everyone is well rested. It's our pleasure to be kicking off the morning of day 2, which should mean that we have a fresh crowd ready to keep the interesting discussions going. My name is Marc Schleifer. I'm the Regional Director for Eurasia and South Asia at CIPE, the Center for International Private Enterprise in Washington, D.C., and I will be moderating this exciting panel on inclusive economic growth and women's economic empowerment. Let me just take a moment first to thank George Matthew and our gracious hosts at ISS, as well as the ADN, the Government of Sweden, AITD, and of course, Carl Gershman and his wonderful team at the National Endowment for Democracy. Sounds like the microphone is still a little bit hissy. Hang on. It's hissing, a little metallic. Let's see if they can work it out. Let's see. Hello? Test. It's all right? Okay. All right, here we go. So let me just take a minute to acknowledge the wonderful team at the NED who put in a lot of hard work to make this possible. Mona, Wilson, Lynn, and Palki, thank you all very much. I'm a little biased because I actually worked for a couple of years at the NED before moving over to CIPE, so these are people I know very well, and I know how hard they work and how much they believe in their organization's mission, so thank you all. So my organization, CIPE, is one of the 4 core institutes of the National Endowment for Democracy, along with NDI, IRI, and of course the Solidarity Center. And much like Solidarity, our work is at the intersection point between economic issues and democracy. And so that means that CIPE explores how economic growth helps to strengthen democracy, and also how strong democratic institutions are needed to make a democracy function well. And among the programmatic areas that we work on are improving the governance and the management capacity of chambers of commerce and business associations, women and youth entrepreneurship, and private sector policy advocacy. And these 3 programmatic areas actually come together in our work with the group of women here, who represent the leaders of a network of women's chambers of commerce and business associations from across South Asia. Their bios are all in your program, so I won't dwell too long on introductions. One small note, you can see that there are 6 of us here, myself and 5 panelists. Though her bio appears in your programs, Srimama or Abbab isn't on your panelist list, which is probably through some email oversight of my own fault. Just to very briefly introduce the speakers here, we have, starting from my left, Rifa Musthapha. She is an attorney at law and an entrepreneur. She is executive director of Fairway Aviation Academy and F-Air, and sits on the board of directors of Fairway Holdings and Fairway City Hotels. And she currently serves as the president of the Women's Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Sri Lanka. To her left, we have Srimama Abbab, who is now a YouTube sensation after her question to the Dalai Lama yesterday led him to show us his humorous side and to cover his head. So Srimama, I think, stole the show yesterday. She's the director of Euro Industries, which is a food processing business in Peshawar, Pakistan, and she played a pivotal role in setting up the Women's Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Peshawar and served as vice president of the Women's Chamber. Then we have Rita Bhandary. She's the president of the Federation of Women Entrepreneurs Association of Nepal. She is a successful entrepreneur herself. She runs a handmade paper company as well as a marketing cooperative. And she's had numerous posts working with the government of Nepal on entrepreneurship promotion issues. Then we are joined by Dr. Manju Kalra Prakash. She is an Assistant Secretary General at FICCI, the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. and she serves as executive director of FLOW, which is the Ficky Ladies Organization. In addition to being the person who is responsible, I hope you remember, for me having this beautiful tie today, she was invited by the European Union for their prestigious European Union Visitors Program, and she was awarded with also the very prestigious Bharat Nirman Award in the area of women's empowerment. And then last but certainly not least, a woman who's made a tremendous impact on my own life, we have Selima Ahmad from Bangladesh. She's the vice chair of the Nital Niloy Group and the founder of the Bangladesh Women's Chamber of Commerce and Industry. She received the Jean J. Kirkpatrick Award from IRI, the International Republican Institute. And last year, she was awarded with the prestigious Oslo Business for Peace Award. So we're going to structure this a little bit differently than some of the panels yesterday. We're going to run this a little bit more like a conversation. I'm going to pose a few questions to the panelists, give them each a chance to respond, and then later on we're going to open it up for some question and answer. So what I'd like to actually start with is something that actually Shauna from the Solidarity Center raised in the closing panel yesterday. She asked, how can we ensure that the effort to promote democracy and to promote human rights also emphasizes issues of women's empowerment? And what I would like to suggest as an opening statement for this panel, I think most of our panelists here would certainly agree with me, is that private enterprise and entrepreneurship is one very key way to expand women's political participation and women's empowerment. So as my first question, I'd like each panelist to reflect a little bit on the ways in which entrepreneurship, private enterprise can help spark economic empowerment for women and thus lead to improved women's political participation by sharing with us some of their thoughts and impressions on how those issues play out in their own countries. So let's start with you, Rifa, and if you could enlighten us as to that those connections between economic empowerment for women and political participation in Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Marc. Inclusion and participation is a major factor in a democracy. Now, in the case of the lawmaking process and in economic development, it is important to include and participate and have women participation. Now, in Sri Lanka, the economy is powered by women. Women, there is almost 70% of Sri Lanka's foreign exchange revenue comes from women in the informal sector. The Sri Lankan economy has the apparel sector, the plantation sector, and the migrant worker. And these are all dominated by women. Now, there is no mechanism, like it was also mentioned in the panel yesterday, that there is no mechanism to even have the inclusion of these migrant workers in the election process of the country. So there we see underrepresentation and low participation. Even in the corporate sector in Sri Lanka, if you take the 26 quoted companies, only 6 of them have women as directors in these companies. And thank you. And with regard to the executive level and the middle management, we do have women participation, but in senior levels, women find it difficult to go up the career ladder due to the various glass ceilings. So women are underrepresented in the case of economic inclusion and economic participation. When we look at I'll take you to the governance of Sri Lanka. In Parliament, Parliament is the supreme legislature, and in Parliament we have only 12 out of the 225 seats held by women. Here, this is a mere 5%. So over 50% population, like in the region, is women. However, we have only a 5% voice in the decision-making process of the country. But in Sri Lanka, we like to brag about the fact that we have produced the first woman prime minister in the world and the first executive woman president in Asia. But we lag far behind in the case of our regional neighbors and therefore we see that there is underrepresentation in the economic development of the country as well as in lawmaking process. But we have good news also. We have a new government in place. It's not yet 100 days. The Women's Affairs Minister has made a public pledge to increase women participation in the lawmaking process and in Parliament to 25%. So this is good news, and it is also some hope for inclusion and participation in economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, Rifa. Srimama, let's turn to you. Obviously, women in Pakistan face a lot of challenges, and with respect to women entering the business sector, those challenges are particularly acute. How does that play out in your view, particularly in Peshawar, for instance?
Thank you very much, Marc. As I understand, you're asking me about the challenges that are faced by women in Pakistan, especially those who are entering the business sector. Challenges have been great, and there was a time when women could not step out, and stepping out was, it is global. I mean, this problem has been global. United States, women in United States had to, fight for their right to vote. So women are, striving hard to fight for their rights everywhere. So there were, challenges were very high. But we realized that without them being included in the mainstream, we cannot achieve anything. Because a woman is a God's handle on earth. So unless and until this handle is not included, we cannot reach anywhere. So we believed in Pakistan, now we are believing in empowering these women through different ways. We use different platforms for this, and we have started empowering them now. Previously, these things were not accepted. Women did not have enough say in the political arena also. They were not allowed to be on the boards. So now there's a great work being done on this line, and we are, adding more women to the mainstream now.
Thank you, Srimama. And I think it's particularly interesting also to note that before your organization was created, women did not actually have the right to create their own chambers of commerce or business associations at all in Pakistan. Is that right?
Yeah. If you want me to.
Sure.
So there was a time when women at that time were not accepted to step out. So we felt the need, those women who were already in business, like myself, we felt a lot of challenges. And we realized that this cannot go on like this. We managed whichever way we managed, and we reached a point. But now what the need of the day was that all these women should gather on one platform. They should have one voice. And these important 51% of the population needed a voice. So getting them together on one platform was an uphill task, because this was not accepted. As I said, it was not kosher for women to step out, and stepping out and then making a chamber. It was not, we really had to, go for policy advocacy for this. We had to keep on talking about it. We advocated it. And we finally came up with this thing, and the government agreed on having women chambers, especially. So women chamber was made, and now women have a voice, and getting women on this platform first, getting the chamber recognized, and then having more members, and making the members realize that they need a platform in order to have a voice, in order to solve their problems. This is now our latest thing, that we have to have more members, and women are now joining in because they see a lot of benefit out of these chambers.
Thank you. Let's turn to you, Rita. We know that obviously Nepal has experienced a very tumultuous set of political events over, over the past couple of decades, and the past decade in particular. How do you see the emerging role of women in business and in politics as feeding into part of that process?
Thank you, Marc. Yes, democracy, we are in the process of making the constitution. So that is a time when we hope to have our voices included. For me itself, like democracy itself is a very unique system of governance where there's a relation between the government and the people. And when we talk about people, women can't be a separate part of it. And yet when we look at the Constituent Assembly that's there right now, we see just 2.4% women have come from direct election. There is a provision in the for 33% representation at all levels of government institution, but very few are being represented there. And one of the main reasons being that it is the economics. Elections are expensive, and when women have to fight against very seasoned political male opponents, it's very difficult for them. So what is really required is that women have to come into, be strong economically. Like if we look at the surveys done from in South Asia, we see women who have access to land, who are owners, have more say in their family. Similarly, if we look at Nepal's field research, we see that those women who have access to their income, who can control their own income, they have more, they're included by the family in decision making. And similarly, like when women have income in their hand, it gives them that little extra confidence that, okay, beside my work, I can go in for other creative opportunities, and politics is one of them. So I think having women come into economics, but for that, of course, trainings, encouragement, knowledge, everything is required.
Well, thank you, Rita. I think that's a really interesting formulation to draw that link between the way income and land ownership can help empower women within their families, and drawing that link to the way women's participation in business can help inform their participation in the wider political circle. I think that's really interesting. Manju, obviously, you know, India has, in terms of its democratic institutions, made incredible gains, and on the women's empowerment side has also done a lot on the economy as well. India has passed a number of provisions that would mandate increased participation of women in the economy. So I'm wondering whether you could talk a little bit from your perspective about how you see those issues playing out.
Thank you, Marc, and good morning to everyone. You have rightly said that there have been a lot of laws which have been passed in India which definitely seek for more participation of women, whether it's in the political arena or elsewhere in the corporates. Let me throw some statistics at you, which everybody knows generally, but still I thought it would be nice to quote them. Women make up less than 10% of world leaders. That's the situation as of now, even elsewhere in the world. Nordic countries are doing better, where we have a lot of women in the parliament. In India, we have the 33% provision, and we are at 11.6% as women parliamentarians. However, we are doing better at the grassroots levels, which is called in the federal states as panchayats. And there we have about approximately 36%. You know, give an average, if you take out, it works out to 30% across India. Some states have done extremely well as going as participation at 36%. And if we look at the women in corporate boards, you'll be happy to know that at least 11 banking institutions are led by women. So the financial sector is actually doing well at the top with having women participation. Even if you look at Bhutan, in the ministerial cabinet, they have only one female minister against the 10 parliamentarians that they have. What we feel is that if women are kept in these roles, which are decision making, it definitely helps and ensures that the decision making includes a broader range of perspectives and interests. And it takes into consideration the very issues of development, which are necessary for the children, for the women, for the society at large, because they look at it at a much broader level. So when you say that, the laws are in place, but there's still a lot of way to go, and we are conscious of that, and from our side also we are looking into that, but still, it's still better off.
Thank you. I think that's really interesting. You in particular, you touched on the number of women who serve on the boards of financial institutions, and I know that, Selima, you serve on the board of a bank, and I know that a number of the other board members at BWCCI serve on bank boards. And I think that's an issue that we'll actually come back to a little bit later. It touches on the next question that I have. But I'd like to throw that first question also to you, Selima. How do you see the connections between women's economic empowerment and their political empowerment in Bangladesh?
Thank you, Mark. It's important and it's very interesting that Bangladesh, we have the Prime Minister as a woman, and the opposition and the largest political party, both are women, and the Speaker is a woman. But although in